Vauxhall got it right 3 times in a row with the Cavalier, which has gone on to become one of the marque's best loved and most important cars. The success story came to an abrupt halt in 1995 with the arrival of the Vectra on the N registration. What happened? Well, the short story is they rushed it into production before development was finished, and they didn't get away with it. There seems to be few N-Reg survivors. You're more likely to encounter an N-Reg Cavalier, even though the Vectra got the bulk of time on the plate. With early Vectras often poorly built, it's not surprising there aren't many around. These early cars are interesting though. Looking back 28 years later, and yes, it really has been that long, what are they really like? By the time the P and R Reg had arrived, there had been a lot of updates, and the build quality was steadily improving. The 1998 model year was ultimately what should have been released 3 years prior, particularly in relation to the SRI. We were delighted to be able to spend some time with Alan, who owns this immaculate Vectra GLS 1.8 16 valve, which is of course an early N-Reg model. We took it for a drive, but first, here's a quick bit of history. The Mark I Vauxhall Cavalier was introduced in 1975. Basically they took an Ascona B, fitted a Manta front end, and boom, sales took off and they sold 250,000 of them. In 1981 the front wheel drive Mark II Cavalier arrived and sales rocketed. This car was vital in securing Vauxhall's future, and they got it bang on again in 1988 with the Mark III Cavalier, which was the right car at the right time and perhaps Vauxhall's greatest success overall. The battle between Ford and Vauxhall in the family car sector is a famous one. While the Mark III Cavalier had a fantastic run, the arrival of the Mondeo in 1993 gave Ford a much more modern car and marked the beginning of a vast improvement in Ford's cars after they had taken an absolute tanking and hammering over the quality of the Mark V Escort in 1990. The sector had also become much more cutthroat during 92-93 with the Xantier and Laguna arriving, the 405 getting a big facelift, and there was also the British-built Toyota Carina, Nissan Primera and Honda Accord, all broadening the choice. In 1995 it was time for Vauxhall to hit back, and it was revealed that the Cavalier name was no more, that the new model would wear the same Vectra name as its Opel stablemate from the previous generation. There was huge expectation and hype around the new car, and at the time mainstream models like this were huge sellers. It's not like it is today. GM reported a £1.1 billion investment in the new car, which is a phenomenal amount of money today, never mind back then. The Cavalier needed replacement, but there were rumours leaking out of Germany that the new car wasn't ready. The overworked engineering department still needed time to fine-tune the completely new suspension setup. One source said the car was at least a year from being finished its development. Over £1 billion in and a facelifted Mondeo on the way, they ended up just having to run with it, and as a result ended up with Vauxhall's most criticised product of the 90s. So where did all that money go? Well, while each generation of Cavalier looked totally different to the other, the Vectra's shape was clearly an evolution of the Cavalier, or Vectra A. Now, while the Mark II and Mark III Cavalier were actually very similar under the skin, and all Vauxhall front-wheel drive cars of the 80s and 90s followed a very similar template, the Vectra was a totally clean-sheet design. The front and rear suspension assemblies were fitted with rubber-mounted subframes to aid refinement, the steering rack was moved down low onto the subframe, front and rear tracks substantially widened, and the rear suspension was a fully independent multi-link setup. There was a lot of work to do, and not enough time to do it all. Now, we have a theory that Vauxhall actually messed up with the Cavalier facelift in 1992 and didn't go far enough, and had they made a more extensive update for the second half of the car's life, it wouldn't have looked so old come 1995, allowing the Vectra to complete its development cycle before going on sale in 1996. The frustrating thing was, for the Vectra, all the elements were there for an excellent car, and they just ended up throwing it out the door and hoping for the best. The suspension settings, particularly on the rear on early cars, were not correct. Build quality was questionable, with rattles, squeaks and creaks on the interior plastics, and they didn't even have a set of sport seats or suspension ready for the iconic SRI models, with the early ones basically identical to a standard 2 litre, barring a close ratio gearbox. Now, they might have gotten away with it were it not for Jeremy Clarkson's controversial Top Gear review of the car in October 1995, which made headline news in the mainstream at the time. So scathing was he in his criticism of the car. Now, it wasn't a complete disaster early on, with the Vectra praised for class-leading refinement and comfort. Curiously, a similar model to the one that Clarkson taught to bits won a What Car test, beating the Xantier, pre-facelift Mondeo and the Laguna. Vauxhall did in fact have a great car, and they did largely get there with it by the end in 2002, it just wasn't anywhere near ready, as we've mentioned. This was borne out by the raft of updates quickly applied. The V6 cars had different suspension from the start, and this setup was quickly rolled out to the rest of the range, which made an immediate improvement. The Vectra B ultimately proved to be a sales success for Vauxhall, with over 500,000 sold, and it's been an underrated car in the years since due to that dodgy start. The sporting models never got the credit for handling they deserve. The chassis really does work well with everything dialed in, and the larger engines offer strong performance. We hope to get behind the wheel of a few different Vectras in the coming months, so stay tuned and stay smitten. Hello, welcome back to Once Driven Forever Smitten. We're in sunny Essex, and I'm down here to see Alan, who owns this very early NREG Vectra 1.8 GLS. Now, these are super rare when you consider that the Cavalier was around for less of the NREG than the Vectra was. There seems to be more Cavaliers that have survived. He does also have a Cavalier here, which is a 1.8 GLS saloon, an early non-airbag facelift model, but we're mainly here to focus on the Vectra today because these are just so rare. And of course, this is a car with a notorious reputation. It was an NREG 1.8 that Clarkson monstered on Top Gear back in 1995. This is one of the very earliest cars, and we're going to take you around that. We'll get a look, show you some of the differences and the features on it, and take it out, see what it's really like. I mean, how long have you owned the Vectra for?
18 months. 18
months. Where did it come from?
Got it on Car and Classic. It was up in Northampton for sale. Deceased estate. The daughter got the car, so yeah, I bought it. I think it was 1500, might have been 1600. 36,000 miles.
Yeah, I mean they're just rare. There's not many of them have survived on the NREG. So how do you find it to drive then? How do you get on with it?
Apart from the fact that the steering doesn't move, it's
just
lovely.
Very early car. No adjustment on the steering.
We've done Loughborough and back, Guildford and back. Some of the kids are at uni, so it's the uni car now.
So have you always been into your Vauxhalls?
I've had about 10, I think, but they've all been just family cars.
Yeah.
You know, now's the only time I'm actually worried about looking after them and trying to keep them.
Well, the good thing about the Vectra is it's a lot more resistant to rust than a lot of earlier Vauxhalls. So, I mean, this one looks... What mileage is on it?
So now 44.
44,000, yeah, it looks at it.
It's almost catching up the Cavalier.
What's the Cavalier got?
46.
Yeah, and this Cavalier was the same thing, a deceased estate. Yeah.
This was Chelmsford, £500 this was. But we've spent a lot.
Yeah.
Keep her alive.
Yeah, you can't knock that. I mean, there is a big difference in terms of how modern the Vectra is and the Cavalier. When you see the two of them side by side, the main difference is the power plant in this, because for whatever reason Vauxhall opted to keep the 1.8 single point right the way through the Mark III Cavalier, while the Mondeo had a twin cam 16 valve multi-point, which this has. This has got 115 horsepower, which is the same as the outgoing C20NE engine, which is in the Cavaliers to the end. So if you could only get yourself a 1.8, you were getting a massive step up if you got a Vectra as opposed to a Cavalier in 1995. Now this is the X18XEV, which is externally identical to the X20XEV, which first appeared in the Cavalier in the 1994 model year. Because this being an early car, there's no air conditioning in it. It's got a sunroof instead. I think it probably would be pre-wired for cruise control. There'll be a plug taped up in the loom somewhere on the bracket there. That's where your cruise control goes in. But you can see there, that's the twin cam 16 valve, 115 horsepower. These went well. And then you've got, step back to the 80s really. This is the 1.8 single point big block, 90 horsepower, a very dependable engine, but nothing much to write home about in the performance stakes. And it does surprise me that Vauxhall kept this going right the way to the end, because it was quite comprehensively outgunned by everybody by the end, and they actually made the 1.8 the same price as the 1.6 during the last couple of years of production. But the upside of these is they are so easy to work on. Look at the space you've got round here, because there's no ABS there either, so you've got even more room. Look at that, it looks very, very original. You can even see the engine number stamped into the front of the block easy. You won't be able to see it in the camera, but you can see it easy enough there. It's of course, because this is a K registration, it's got the blue interior, which only lasted for 1 year of the facelift, which meant you got blue door cards, blue seats, blue everything. And of course, being an early one, you get the lovely non-airbag steering wheel and the adjustable steering column, which everybody likes. Look at that, 46,000 miles. This is a it's got the old phone mount on it as well. This is a proper 90s Retmobile, this. Yeah, I do like one of my favourite steering wheels of all time. I think a lot of people agree with me there, but we'll go and compare this to the Vectra side by side now before we go. Because having had a look at the Cavalier, the Vectra was a big step up on the inside. The dashboard was quite clearly influenced by the Omega. We've got the big shelf going right across the top. Ergonomically it was nicely laid out. You've got your twin cup holders down there, the gear stick's in the same position pretty much as the Cavalier, as is the rest of the driving position. You do have this armrest in the centre, which does get in the way of the handbrake and the gear lever depending on what you're used to. But this being a GLS, it's got the soft fuzzy velour trim that you don't get in cars anymore, and it's got the leather steering wheel with the controls on it. And being this is a 1996 car, it doesn't have adjustment for the airbag. It took Vauxhall a year before they were comfortable with you adjusting the angle of the steering wheel. So it's got a fixed position on there. And we can also see it's got an electric sunroof in it. Being an early car, as you got forward onto the 97 and definitely the 98 GLS, you would find that the vast majority of them would come equipped with air conditioning and also CD players. This one's got a tape player, because again, we're just at that changeover period in the mid-90s. But the Vectra, they did have issues with build quality on the early ones, but I'm going to say, because this has survived, this isn't going to be one of them. This is going to be quite nicely screwed together. It's got velour on the door cards there. I know there was always a kind of nice, there was a step up in the quality feel. See, that shuts with a nice solid thunk there. And you get a bit more space in the back of them as well, although you've got the seat right back. Have you got the seat that far? Is that far back as that goes, or have you got it extra far back?
As far back as it goes.
I was going to say, I wouldn't even think it would have gone back that far.
No one else can sit behind me.
Yeah, that is the seat as far back as it can go. How tall are you?
6'5".
6'5", yeah. I'm just 5'11" with my boots on. But there was some extra interior space in the Vectra. We've got these door cards with the pockets in the back of them as well. You know, this is, it's so nice in here. It smells just pure original Vauxhall. Of course, these cars had such a mixed reputation from new. I'll be really interested to see what this one's like, because they did make quite a lot of changes to them early on in the cycle of the car. Well, just having a look here, one of the differences with the Vectra to the Cavalier was the Vectra was available with cruise control. The Cavalier never was. And what you'll find with your Vectra is, if you don't have it, if you look down into this corner down here, and I don't know if you can see it, but there is a plug taped up in the loom there where that cable tie is. I just pulled that there. That is your cruise control wiring plug. And the cruise control will connect in down by the brake pipes down there, and then your cable will go into there, and then you'll find inside the car there will be a plug socket for your cruise control stock. And all you would have to do was, I wouldn't even bother with the clutch switch, I would just put the wire to 12 volts and then it would all work. Woohoo! Now going to go and take the Vectra for a drive. We just had a slight complication with the Cadillac's electric windows. Had to go and take the fuse out the module. Of course, reverses are both at first on these, not below fifth like on mine. Yeah, it's mad how small these look today, isn't it? It's just because it was a bigger car. The mystery of how you get out the car park. Is this Lakeside it's called?
Yeah. No one else will know how to get out either, so it doesn't matter.
The exit there. It is super quiet, isn't it? There's just no...
No, it's lovely. It's a lovely cruiser.
Moving at low speed here, it's just... you can barely hear the engine.
Which is a complete difference to the Cav.
Yeah.
The Cav is utilitarian.
Oh, no.
He was at Festival of the Unexceptional.
Speed mountains, I like the big speed bumps round here anyway. Not somewhere for a lowered car. Which way is best to go? Go
Right, I suppose.
6 and 2 3s. So you feel that you definitely know that this is a good one. There's a Vauxhall garage.
Tony the boy, yeah.
So it does feel tightly screwed together. Like you can tell it's not done very much. But I remember some of them being pretty new at Plum Centre and they were rough.
Bought my Sintra from there.
So that's got a nice...
She feels tight. She does
to
feel,
it, yeah, it does.
Yeah. So does the Cavalier, to be fair. I mean, obviously the Cavalier's rougher, but...
We're straight over here.
Yeah, straight down there's probably best. Unfortunately, in the middle of Lakeside, you're not going to go very far or fast.
Yeah, it's,
yeah, if you go down, there's a roundabout.
Down here?
Yeah, there's a roundabout, and then you can go back. Unless you want to go on the faster road.
I'll just turn around here.
Yeah, or go left, and then you'll come back out at the big roundabout. You can go all the way down, and then you can go left. The Burger Bus is down here. So it's the only thing of note in Thurrock.
The steering feels a bit different to mine, but then again, this is on 14-inch wheels. Go down here.
Straight on.
This is on 14s and mine's on 16s, and I found there was quite a big difference with the Vectra depending on what tyre size you got. But I mean, there's no slack in the gear lever or anything like that. I think some of them, the first 3 cars, just did a really hard life.
I mean, she stayed in the garage for 25 years. There'll be a left coming up in a little while, there'll be a bus on the corner.
It's got nice, it's got a nice feel to the steering. There's no play in the steering at all. And we are going over some shocking bumps here as well, and there's no knocks or bangs off it or anything like that either.
She's a quiet girl. There's the Burger Bus.
The Burger Bus, hey! And it's open.
Yep. Open 24/7.
Oh, where do I go here?
Straight on. Straight down there, sorry.
Down there,
Yep.
into the right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
we're
follows
not
round
going into Every's depot.
No, it's a chicane. And then left.
This feels well sorted. It's worth remembering that this exact model of Vectra won the What Car multi-car test in 1995. It beat the Mondeo, at least the pre-facelift one. And it just comes down to how, you know, how mixed the build quality was in the early ones of these, and whether or not you got a good one or a bad one. And obviously, this being a survivor, it's a good one.
If you go left, you'll come back out at the big roundabout.
It's got that Vectra brake pedal that's got just a bit of play in it before it bites, like the earlier Cavaliers had the non-ABS. This is really nice. It feels responsive as well. It was a huge step up with the 1800. Well, there's not even any, that indicator stock feels really tight. There's no play in that either.
Yeah, it was bought from Gross in Northampton for 15 grand. And bloke on 36,000 miles.
That's lovely. It makes me want a pre-facelift.
Done 500 mile a year for the last 10 years.
lot of the ones at Plum Centre had more miles than that on them after 2 years. You know, they were doing like 30, 40,000 miles a year, some of these cars. And they were driven like people had stolen them. I mean, that's... It's super long geared as well, as all Vectras apart from the SRI were. I feel it's got a good bit of lift about it. The steering wheel is, thankfully for me, that's where I have the steering wheel normally, so it doesn't bother me.
That needs tilting up massively for me. But then you start binding on the dashboard, which is what I had with my Amiga. You couldn't get your fingers between the dash and the...
Oh yeah, there's not much space. Yeah, they weren't really too big on, even when they did do the adjustment, it wasn't like you could pull it in and move it up and down, it just went on that pivot.
Straight up comes the big roundabout left.
Well, it's responsive, it picks away. That's 1500 RPM in fourth, yeah, it's just lovely. Right, a bit left here, yes, I know where we are. And you come up to a halt here, you can barely even hear the engine running. It's that quiet. Beepage. Oh, it's so busy in this part of the world and people are so angry all the time.
You're not wrong. You should try flying to London every day.
Ah, no thanks, once in a blue moon's enough.
Try doing it in a 1.4 Golf with 207,000 miles on the clock.
This thing rips along. It's got a good bit of go about it. The one thing at the Vectra was every engine would outperform the equivalent Mondeo engine. Go around about here and turn right.
You're going to go right in the next one.
Doesn't matter, you can even stick it into fifth and it'll pick away at 1000 RPM at like just about 30 mile an hour. That gearbox is tight as well. The variation in build and the way these things behave was like massive. Like you could get one and all the dash plastics would be creaking, the seat would be creaking, the gear shift would be like notchy on it, and this is anything but.
This is a Luton built car as far as I'm aware. But so is the Cavalier as well.
Yeah. The thing with them was that the story goes that they just weren't finished developing them yet, and they were told this, and they said no, we've got to get the car out. So it went out, it was released before it was ready. And you could see that with like the 98 SRI, because that was when they finally got that sorted. They didn't even do a handling package or uprated anything on the early SRI apart from the V6. That's been lovely. I've enjoyed that little drive of that there. Been good. Well, that's a bit of a revelation, that, I think. I'm well impressed. What a lovely car. It smells pure Vauxhall as well. It's got that genuine new car Vauxhall smell to it that I haven't experienced since like 2001, 2002. It's beautiful. That's been really interesting to go and drive that early Vectra, far better than a lot of the indications of early reports would have you believe. It's a beautiful car, well done Alan for saving it and being so determined to keep it utterly standard.
Standard as it can be.
Yeah, it's a great thing to drive that. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Thank you very
brilliant.
much. Cheers.
Thank you, mate. Cheers.
Right, thanks. Right, catch you again soon. have a nice roll about on the ground, because it's a bit too hot to be furry today, isn't it? Won't be many nice days like this left. Hey Bob, what do you reckon? It'd be too hot to get in cars. Well, that wouldn't stop you.